Good afternoon, we're going to call out the tour. And I would ask please, like to welcome you, if you have cell phones, please turn them off this time. That's all stuff. We will stand and have pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Joyce and prayer by Councilmember Jill.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You bow with me, please. Lord, we come before you this evening with gratitude in our hearts for the gift of this day, for the opportunity to serve, and for the privilege of living in this community we call home. In this chamber where decisions are made and futures are shaped, we ask for your presence to guide us. Grant us wisdom beyond our own understanding. Help us to listen not only to the voices in this room, but also to the quiet needs of those who don't speak. May we lead with integrity, speak with compassion, and act with cold that will deepen our understanding and strengthen our resolve to do what's right, what is kind, and what is just. Bless every hand and heart in this room, council members, staff, citizens alike, with the sense of purpose and the spirit of unity. Let us remember the leadership of the sacred trust and that even small decisions can have lasting impact. We strive to build a city that's safe, fair, and full of opportunity. Remind us that the measure of our success will be in how we care for the most vulnerable among us. We offer this prayer of humility, hope, and a deep desire to serve well. Amen. Amen.
Thank you. On our consent agenda tonight, we have B and C. We're going to take these two items off our consent agenda tonight and then talk about it at that date. We have our minutes on May 5th, and I would like to also add to our consent agenda, you got a copy of our minutes for May 30th. We could add that to our consent agenda and approve the May 5th and May 30 minutes. So I make a motion second to leave those minutes. May 5th and May 30th.
Second.
Are there any more discussion on the measure on hand? Opposed, none, vote none. Thanks so much.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask is the council member recognized her online?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am, but I'm not getting a picture, and if I'm not coming up for you, you guys can't see me, then you can't see me, but.
Oh, we can. If you are.
I'm on camera.
You're on camera. Our camera's not coming through.
We can see you guys, I gather, you can't see us, is that right? You can hear us okay?
I can, that's fine, yep.
Thank you.
Zoning hearings, business, public hearing for text amendment, 205.010 text. Shay Harris, Jill, are you ready?
Mr. Shea Harris is applying for a text amendment to add tattoo parlors as a conditional land use to general commercial district or C3 zone properties, as well as shopping centers. It appears the proposed text amendment is consistent with the purpose and intent of C3 zoning, as well as the comprehensive plan and the character area map, as the majority of properties zoned C3 are within the commercial investment areas which support general businesses, restaurants, retail, professional offices and services, and a mixture of uses and off-frontage as land uses. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
It looks like they were not involved with ACC on the text amendment. Was there anybody that objected against it?
No, sir.
They didn't come from my council.
And it was the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah, planning zone, yes. Now, the public hearing was over, so they want you to like to speak for the text amendment. Sure.
Leslie Clark Jones, 1061 Arbor Lane. I am a realtor here in Madison and I work at Millions and Carroll, excuse me. I want to speak on behalf of this text amendment. I think that there are a lot of citizens from Madison driving to other areas for this service, myself being one of them 3 times. Yes, I have 3 tattoos. You would not look at me and think that, and that is why I wanted to say it. So if you have something in your mind about that, it's not always the case. And we need a boutique, nice place, and I know that my friend Shaker can do that. So that's all I have to say about that. I will ask any questions, answer any questions.
Where are your tattoos?
Thank you so much.
I guess I'd like to make a comment. Because all my life I had this aversion to tattoos. And I'm not sure why. All the bad guys had them when I was growing up. And discovered that my daughter moved off to Boston and has a sleeve. And it did not sit well with me at first. Until I realized that every item that she had in her sleeve had something to do with her childhood in Madison, Georgia. And it was a moment that I will carry on for the rest of my life. It was pretty
Thank you so much. Anyone else to speak for this text amendment? Anyone here to speak against this text amendment? If not, this public hearing is closed and back by council for vote.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the text amendment 2025.010 for Shai Harris.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, not voting, none. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
Public hearing, conditional use, 2025.011.0, Robert Ferguson.
So So on the same topic, Mr. Ussery, on behalf of Shea Harris, is requesting a conditional use for a tattoo parlor to operate out of 1400 Eaton Road, which is zoned C3. The applicant has informed staff that needles will be disposed of properly using the process enforced by the Food and Drug Administration. It does not appear that the proposed use would be detrimental to the natural environment or surrounding property values. Tattoo parlors are not considered a generator of hazardous waste by the EPA. Their business days will be Monday through Friday, with Tuesdays and Thursdays operating as appointments only, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday would operate as walk-ins. Mr. Harris informed us that the business will depend highly on walk-ins early on until they build a client base. And we don't see an issue with parking. So the shopping center currently has around 100 parking spaces, and the businesses in that shopping center only require 64 spaces with an additional 1 space per full-time employee. So the parking appears to be more than adequate. And as I said previously in the previous zoning application, it appears consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I do believe Mr. Harris is in the audience, but I would be happy to answer any questions. And if I can, then he might be able to answer questions about his business.
Are there any questions to deal with this time? If not, the public hearing is over. Anyone can speak for this conditional use?
I can speak for Bob.
Sure.
I'm Shea Harris. I'm the one who's climbing this out of 5561 St. Creek Road here in Madison. Bob is not here to speak on this. He actually had 2 knee replacement surgeries and is recovering from that. So that's my kid's going to be about he's not here speaking about the text. If there's any other questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer.
Anyone else here to speak for this conditional use? Anyone here to speak against this conditional use? If not, we're going to close it back to the council for debate on second.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the conditional use 2025.011.com, Robert Ussery.
Second.
Are there any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimous. Public hearing, variance 2025.012.1. Variance. Signature on by the LLC. Jill?
And can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So Mr. Jake Williams is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum distance from his principal structure to the accessory structure from 15 feet to 3 feet, which would result in an 80% variance. The construction of both the primary and accessory structure has currently occurred, so they are both existing structures. Slide again. I'm going to give a brief history because to kind of get to where we are. So plans for construction of the applicant's residential dwelling or the principal building as well as the accessory structure. Those plans were meeting all setback requirements. They were submitted on April 1st, 2024 and approved April 8th, 2024. And what you're looking at now is the approved plan. At a later date, a representative of the property met with planning staff to discuss an encroachment of a neighboring accessory structure on the property. So the property owner adjacent to our applicant was building onto our applicant's property. Planning staff informed the applicant that this would be a civil issue and they would need to resolve between both property owners. The civil issue was resolved and it resulted in the shifting of the property lines. Slide. So the property line was originally roughly at a 90-degree angle, and it has been shifted off to the left, so that civil issue was resolved. Later, an updated site plan illustrating substandard setbacks was submitted to the building office in December 2024. It does not appear that the site plan was approved, and no further correspondence with the owner of the property was had with the city to indicate approval of the updated site plan. The principal structure and the accessory structure have since been built. During construction, the building officer did not confirm appropriate setbacks between the principal building and the accessory structure. So as a result, we've updated the protocol to include setback inspection by our code compliance officer at the time of footing inspection, just to try to stop this from happening again. And slide, please. And to summarize standard 2 on the staff report, I just want to point out before you all move into discussion, the literal application of the zoning ordinance would not create unnecessary hardship. However, the enforcement of the zoning ordinance post-construction would create hardship, as it would result in demolition of existing construction. So just want y'all to keep that in mind as you move into your discussion. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
About questions, Jill?
Yes, sir.
If not, I'll public hearing is open. Anyone here to speak for the variance 2025.0123? Sure.
I'm Jake Williams. My name is Clint. If y'all have any questions about this, she's laid it out pretty straightforward. The neighboring lot was already constructed, and so when we found this problem, we had a conversation about, well, do we force them to tear out their garage and their driveway, or do we come to a compromise? And for their sake, it's a lot cheaper to come to a compromise for them. And it's an elderly couple, very elderly couple that lives in that home. So we kind of took that into consideration also, the level of stress that it would cause, living in your home and then having the driveway, garage torn down, moved over, and all that. So that's how we ended up in this situation. A little more to it, that's what I'm saying. If you guys have any questions.
I do have a couple of questions, if I could, Mayor.
Sure.
Mr. Williams, I gather Signature Homes has built homes in Madison before this one?
Yes, sir.
And you have hopes, plans to build more in the future?
Correct.
Maybe knowing the industry probably more than I do, how common or uncommon is it for a builder to erect a structure without an approved site plan?
Not very common. And yes, that's where, when I came down to the office the day we found this, I came down here and spoke with Ms. Molly about this, and Ms. Tanny as well. And I guess that's more on fault of us. We had one referral, then I didn't reach back out to see if we were approved to go forward. It was more of a referral conversation where we would allow this to happen, but I didn't realize that, we needed to go a further step to get all this approved. I did submit a set of plans from Georgia Civil showing the site plan before we constructed, poured in concrete. And I never heard back, so I assumed we were good to go. That was my fault for assuming what happened to me.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak for variance? Anyone else to speak against the variance? If not, public hearing is closed.
I'd like to kind of restate the chronology of this, and please planning department, correct me if I is wrong, but this downhill, first of all, I'm very distressed over this. This is a hard decision for us to deal with. I'm not happy at all. Everyone's got egg on their face, in my opinion. There are no winners in this situation at all. And the losers, I fear, are the citizens of Madison, to be honest with you. And upset about it. So originally, this downhill spiral started with a neighbor encroaching not only on setback lines, but on property lines, for Pete's sake. And somehow our code enforcement and our planning department and our contractor, building contractor, does not spot that until they gather the applicant here comes and realizes they've got a problem, you work something out, adjust the property line. Then, I guess you submitted a revised plan, which for whatever reason not responded to by the planning department. You went ahead and built the building. Our building inspector is not there to say, wait a minute, what happened to the setbacks? And it gets completely constructed, the property landscape. And again, we as a city don't seem to know that even happened until a citizen comes forward and says, whoa, what happened to the 15-foot requirement? I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. And I'm, first of all, is that kind of a roughly accurate version of what happened?
Well, there's a little bit of change there. Our building inspector does not inspect for setbacks. They inspect for code. They do not inspect for zoning. And so there was no anticipation of our building official ever requested to look for setbacks. They don't do that, and I'm paid to do that. They're paid to enforce the construction code of the state of Georgia, not our local zoning ordinance. So they've never inspected our sites for setbacks. And then the other thing I would offer is, I think that you're talking, your disappointment arises from a fundamental misunderstanding of how our enforcement system works. That doesn't make it a bad thing, it makes it where you want to change it, take it in a different direction. For the last 30, 40 years, Madison has been a responsive code enforcement agency. So we respond to complaints that are filed. We're not out there trying to make sure that we play gotcha. We don't do that. So when we have a complaint and it's filed, we follow up on it. You should be able to see that regularly from the complaint section. We are not actively inspecting every site to make sure it complies with every law that they have, or that they should be compliant with, all the way from junk cars all the way to inspection buildings. And I'm not trying to get too far right, I just want you to understand the code enforcement is a reactive process, not a proactive process. And if you'd like to be proactive, we certainly can take it there. We're going to need more manpower, and we certainly are going to need full consensus of council that that's the community you want to take it that direction. That's okay.
Well, if failure to be proactive results in a structure going up that is 80% non-compliant with the setback, then we need to look at that, sure. This is bad. Well, there are probably people that live right on Foster Park Lane who maybe wanted to place their garage similar to what was done in this case, and we're told, no, we have a 15-foot setback. And all of a sudden, I realize that any variance you give here is specific to this property. But how do we tell people, well, the reason he could do it was because he did it without getting permission? That's our defense. I mean, I'm embarrassed. You know, to be honest with you, Mr. Williams, this is totally your doing. You ignored the regulations and went ahead and built this. I personally would be arguing for you to remove the building or remove it and start again. However, I don't think you're solely to blame. I think that the city and our code enforcement and our building contractor did not do a good job. And I think it's all started by your neighbor who, without anyone seeming to know about it, encroached on the property line for Pete's sake of the building. My goodness. So you had a responsibility to follow the site plan. But you were also set up by failures ahead of you, in my opinion. So that leaves me, I'm sorry to want so much about it, but you tell I'm animated on this. What am I supposed to do now? We have an application here for a variance. It's clear to me that the age standards, you have not met them to grant the variance, but yet that is the planning and zoning, the department's recommendation unanimously to give a variance. It's like, that's our choice. I mean, so I'm going to do something I have never done in my 7.5 years of serving on this council. And and I am going to recuse myself. Our city charter says an abstention, not a recusal, an abstention, shall be treated as if the person was absent, the basis of firm moral or ethical conviction. I have a firm moral and ethical conviction that this application does not deserve to be approved for a variance. However, I don't think it's fair to require that you move the building because you are just one of 3 people that are involved in this mess. So that's what I'm doing. I don't like it. I've never done it before. I apologize to my fellow council members who I'm giving this decision to, but I cannot grant variance, yet I see no other alternative that solves this problem. I've got egg on my face, head to toe, the rest of it too. Yes, thank you for your patience, Mayor.
When he came for plans, not only did I have to make sure that the
Are you talking about the department, or are you talking about the presentation to the planning
representation
commission?
of the plan department.
When he came the first time, he did. When he came the second time, he came in via email. I followed up with Tammy since then. We did not send a response via email back. And that is on us, and I will take the egg on the face of 2 of us. But our building inspection is not a fault. I'm going to defend them. They are not contracted to inspect the setbacks, period. So if we want to blame planning and code enforcement, and we want to be more proactive, we put opportunities in place to catch that in the future. We've already called one since then. But most of our complaints are generated by neighbors, or businesses report on other businesses, or homeowners report on other homeowners. That's how we respond. We can be more proactive if that's the council's direction. And then we can do more proactive on very specific things, including like setbacks, if that's what you prefer. We put in placards where you actually state setbacks on signs that are on site. We actually stamp approved setback plans. The first set was approved, and it did receive a stamp set. And we've added code enforcement on our own labor, going and inspecting it, and added a fee for that in the future. By the way, you'll see that coming up to you soon, to inspect it before it goes vertical, because that's when it gets expensive to make people tear it down. And the answer of it being built across the property line and that's not catching it the first time is because nobody reported it. We're not inspecting every house. If we were, most of the ones that are under construction have some, if not 1 or 2 failures.
So that I understand that they got that just resolved, you know, over property line, they got that just resolved.
My understanding from what they presented this evening is they came up with a civil agreement to remove the line. We can stamp that line relocation. That does not affect the fact that the outbuilding is too close to the residents. And so that is the concern this evening, and that's what they're being asked to, or that's what they're asking for relief from. We put all the measures in place we think that are necessary without expending a tremendous amount of code dollars or contracting for additional services out of our third-party provider.
So they got to come to my council members.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
I feel like this has multiple levels of complexity. There are just tons of things that are nested in this stuff. And one of those is the unanimous approval by the planning commission. Something convinced them that this was okay to move forward. And if we are going to honor them and the work that they do, and the time that they invest in examining issues like this, we're in another tough spot, because if we reject this now, we're rejecting their decision as well. So I'm not sure where to take that, actually. I don't know who owns this. And I don't know who wants to take responsibility for it. That's where I was.
Well, I can always take responsibility for it. I don't have any problem following my sword. I do think there's a point where if we have contractors proceed without a stamp set of plans, there is only so much y'all can continue to ask us to do. You know, we can't stop by every day and say, hey, we need to re-inspect your setbacks again today. There's a limit to labor. there is a certain amount of responsibility for the contractor, and I believe they know that. I do believe that the gentleman acted without an intent here, and I think that if I had to hazard a guess, and I'll rely on Jill and Molly because they were there, there's a certain emotive, non-standard meeting section, and this is specifically, I assume why Eric is concerned, because he expressed that they're not meeting the standard. There's a certain amount of humanity that people want to give relief if they see a hardship, regardless of how the hardship was created. And so we have a standard that says you can't have created the hardship yourself. Well, if you believe everything you've heard in this room, then the hardship wasn't entirely created by the applicant. That planning staff should have responded. I'm not going to say that we did respond, because we didn't. We responded to the first one. He received a stamped set of plans. Did he build it to a stamped set of plans? He didn't. But we did respond to an email with a follow-up. And so I'll take responsibility for that. My staff had no evil intent either. And so I think what you're seeing is both the planning commission and planning staff saying, there is a little bit of hardship here that was not created by the applicant. It may not be 100% by the applicant, but there, 100% by the planning department, but there is also not 100% by the applicant. I think that there was some grace given. I will say again, we put in measures into place that already called the next contractor who had that problem. We think we put our finger in the dot yet again without costing the taxpayer a tremendous amount of money. So that's the most we can do right now.
So did that, y'all get any kind of feedback from the community once this was started?
Not that let me check my staff report real quick. Yeah, there wasn't any public comment received at the meeting. And when we did receive the application, there was no public comment sent to us privately as well.
The complaint originated through Councilmember Joyce, citizen approach, he approached planning staff. I might have gone through the manager, I'm not saying anything that's assistant. But the complaint did come to the public, and the public did comment.
This is A&B, and I came to the planning department to find out what was going on.
Great, I just didn't want to mistake it.
Mr. Mayor, this is a tough one, and it's a whole series of events that take place, but with Councilmember Joyce's feelings duly noted and his ability to recuse or abstain, I suppose we still need to do something here.
Absolutely.
If it's right for me, I move that we approve the minimum distance variance at M20071, and due to the following reasons, findings, and/or conclusions, the applicant meets the standards established in section 1130.6, 1, 2, 3, and 8.
And I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion?
I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Betsy, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to ask if that finding specifically included a shared responsibility, so that the applicant is not fully creating the hardship on their own. And I think that makes it partially the standard. That's what I was asking.
Okay, that's it.
I just want to say that I am in complete agreement with Eric as well. I mean, I do feel like this is just such a situation that puts us, between a rock and a hard place. And I get it, everybody's in that position, planning as well. And it's just, I think it just sort of points to a few gaps in how we enforce things. And yes, I don't want to see the extreme where we have to be proactive on enforcement, but maybe, I believe I heard that Monica suggested a few other ways that we might be able to mitigate some of this in the future. And I apologize that Mike sometimes doesn't get me all the words, but I'm hoping anyway, going forward, that there's something we can do to mitigate this. It just let us know that, help us not to have this sort of situation again.
So Councilmember Wagenhauser, I hope you can hear all these words. We have instigated I wasn't against Mark, I promise.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so we have instigated where our code enforcement officer does go to the site and will do a setback inspection, catching it before it goes vertical. There are two opportunities for that. There's not, we have the card posted on site now, which is what the county does, so we're doing that. And then two, we will now be charging a $25 if y'all so levy it, inspection fee of all new homes before they go vertical. Every new outbuilding, we basically are sending Philip over there for a half hour to check all setbacks.
Yeah.
Have a motion, second, on the table. All in favor, show of hands. Opposes? Let the record show 3 for 1 abstention.
Did you get Betsy's? Vote here? Thank you.
Public hearing for text amendment 2025.013, Rose Company.
Mr. Jason Wood, on behalf of RM Rose Company and Distilleries, is requesting a text amendment, to add distillery as a conditional land use category to downtown commercial zoning districts versus C1 zoning districts. The land use would permit distilling, bottling, and distributing of alcohol. It appears the proposed text amendment is consistent with both the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance intent of C1 zoning, because it might expand the downtown shopping and dining while also providing a new business type for residents and tourists. This proposal would be a narrow change, since the applicant is proposing distilleries as a conditional use in C1 districts only. Slide. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Phil? If not, the public hearing is over. There, anyone to speak for this text amendment?
The applicant is not here this evening. He expresses his apologies. He was hoping to come, but he wasn't able to come tonight.
Anyone from the audience to speak for? Anyone to speak against the text amendment? If not, the public hearing is closed. Back to the council.
I do think Mayor is important to point out in Jill's last comment that this applies to the downtown commercial district only. So that's right in the C1. C1?
Yes.
Yeah. Just the C1 district only. It would be in shopping centers and in more outlying areas, simply downtown, where we already have an entertainment district. It makes sense to me.
Any other comments from my council? None. For motion and second.
And Mayor, for no further discussion of the council, I move to approve the text amendment based on the application of public hearing for the text amendment change to allow the distillery in the C1 commercial district.
Second.
Are there any other discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote now. Public hearing, variance 2025.014.0.
Mr. Tripp Allsbrooks is applying for a variance to, he's requesting an accessory structure ground floor area variance of 335 square feet. So the total ground floor area of his primary structure is 1,018 square feet, which would bring the allowed area of the accessory structure to be 540 square feet, which is half of the primary structure's ground floor. The applicant is requesting a floor area increase from 540 square feet to 875 square feet, which would be a 62% variance. Slide. In the past, the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, has approved accessory structures stylized as barns. The HPC reviewed this application at their April meeting and decided the general size and placement of the structure is appropriate. Slide. We received public comment for this application on April 13th and May 7th, which have been included in your staff report. The proposal appears to meet all other standards required by section 800.1, and the applicant has stated the proposed accessory structure's height will be screened by downward sloping along the front side as well as plantings. Slide. And I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Chair? If not, public.
I do have one question, Mayor. It seems that the scale of this barn building is directly related to the size of the existing structure.
Yes.
And that's where the percentage comparison comes in.
Yes.
But yet, in the report, it looks like at some point, who knows when, that structure will be torn down and a new, bigger structure is planned next to it. Is that something that we are supposed to consider at all, or are we simply looking at the extant building?
Yeah, you're only looking at the existing structure and the proposed barn. The other building footprint that you can see in your attachment, that's not part of this application.
Thank you.
Any more comments from my colleagues?
I want to ask a quick question, just a clarifying question as well. So when we are considering the size of an accessory, and with the standard being 50% of the main primary building, we're looking basically at that footprint, are we not? We are not going up and including all the square feet in either the primary structure or the accessory structure.
Yes, so we're just looking at the ground floor area, and that excludes garages, porches, balconies, and basements and attics as well. So it's just the ground floor area.
Okay.
More comments by Councilman
If I can say something real quick about this, and I understand everything regarding the size, which is quite much bigger than what we allow. And honestly, we can do all that math and then as I guess is that Molly I was speaking with? Sorry, I have no faces. But anyway, so we're looking at the square foot that doesn't acknowledge or doesn't take into account the what do you call it, the porches and whatever other kind of extensions there are. But quite frankly, this thing is enormous. The footprint may be only, what is it, 81%, or I don't know, anyway, it's well over what the 50% that's allowed. But then once once you start adding, so I guess here we go, it's 81% of the main structure, I believe. Is that correct? Does anybody get that number? Staff?
I think it's a 62% variance, I think is the number you're looking for.
So it means only 12% above the 50%, is that what we're saying?
No, 60% above. Right, so Betsy, if I can offer, so the ordinance is written to cover most of Madison's properties. We recognize that the historic district is a different animal, And whereas barns would not be appropriate in Cedar Lakes, they were very appropriate in the historic district. And so in order to replicate the historic pattern of the historic district, if people propose that, we don't want a barn the size of a garage to be scaled like a barn. So therefore, the exception you're being asked to levy is the privilege of the historic district that the rest of the community doesn't get because it's an ag building. And that's only because we have ag structures on our historic lots in downtown, or not downtown, but in town.
That's, yes, okay, I get all of that. I'm just saying, first of all, I feel like it's just enormous, and I know you don't take into consideration the porches and the decks and so forth and so on, but that actually, but it's still, once that's put up, you have that nice little, whatever, 800 pushing 900 square foot structure, and then you have 16 feet added to the width, and you have another like 18 feet added to the lake, because of the porches and such, and all of a sudden it's like an enormous thing sitting on that property. I'm fine, I get it, we're just looking at that small little footprint, but I'm concerned that this is just sort of overwhelming, and I feel like it might.
So I might suggest Ken speak to it, because the ordinance is written to cover all ranch houses and everything else in town, so there's a direct relationship between the size of the outbuilding. We want to keep them from outside the houses. In this instance, the appropriate scale comparison in the historic district for a barn are the other barns that are in the district. And I wasn't at that meeting, so I can't speak to that, but both the chair of the HPC and the staff person are in the room, and they're the ones who made the recommendation. I'm just saying that we kind of have an apples orange problem where the ordinance doesn't fit everything in this scenario.
I totally get that. There was actually in the standard 3, there were 3 examples, I believe, that were cited. One of which actually is under the 50%, I think. But my point is, even when we're looking at the standards, I think we only have, of the 7, there are only 3 that are okay. And if you've got 4, that it's, it's not a hardship. That it's not, it doesn't confer special privilege. It is, anyway, I'm just surprised that it really doesn't check most of the boxes on the standards, and yes, it got passed. Anyway, my point is, I think, especially for the size of the property, I think, this is going to be enormous. It's really going to stand out. So anyway, I just say that this is. I'm surprised that the HGC approved this.
It looks like it was a unanimous vote, HPC vote.
I don't think there was an actual vote. It's kind of an initial hearing. It doesn't require a vote. I will say, if I could, Mayor, this kind of relates maybe with what Councilman Malinowski referred to earlier. When you have a unanimous vote, whether it's HPC or planning and zoning, maybe they see different things that I see. I feel my obligation is to look at these standards. Standards are supposed to allow us to grant a variance. And I see in this particular case, I see it failing like 6 of the 8. So, and I will say, one of the standards that fails is one that it does appear this variance will confer upon the property a special privilege denied to others. That is the definition of a variance. You're giving something special to that one property that other people don't get. Be it that's in our standards as something that is, it's self-fulfilling prophecy almost. Anyway, when I look at these 8 standards, which we're supposed to, I don't know whether it's supposed to look at half of them is up, 2 of them is up, all 8, I don't know. But it looks like, in my opinion, it fails, and I think the planning department kind of, in their report says the same thing, it fails 6 of them. But that's not the first time we approved variances that don't meet all our standards.
And before y'all deliberate any further, we might open up to public comment just before deliberating.
And I need to correct one thing for the record. The standard that Frank continues to train us on is the special privilege conferred different from similarly situated properties. So if we have properties that are also in the historic district, that can also do the historic barn character, they are receiving that same privilege. It's not that they can't receive the same privilege that the ranch house in Cedar Lakes does, and the ranch house can't get a barn. The standard is similar situated properties. And so I believe that in the past, the mayor and council have given the right to build barns on similarly situated properties.
That's true, Monty. And also is why there's no legal import for any variance being transferred to other properties, because those situations is exactly the same. Everyone has a little bit of a difference, even though they look the same.
And I will say that in the past, I won't say we've always directed people to follow the preservation rule through the variance process, but we're trying to increasingly get more procedurally correct. So even if HPC signs off on it, we're making them get a variance, whereas maybe in the past they haven't always had to do that. In the future, we may want to see us write a different standard, because we know that this 50% rule does not apply in the historic district. So we might need to go ahead and craft a second standard for the historic district, but we've been trying to not carve it out as unique for privileges.
Any other comments on the budget? None, we already have a motion, second on the table. All in favor, show of hands.
What is the motion?
Yeah, y'all didn't open for a public hearing.
4,
Is somebody making a motion?
yes. So the council had made on this. So we get a motion in a second. No more public comment? Motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the variance of the ground floor area variance at M 10032A due to the following reasoning, findings, and/or conclusions. The aesthetic, size, and placement of structure receives support from the HPC.
Second.
Are there any more discussions? All in favor, show of hands. 1, 2, 3. Not up, let the record show. Opposes? 3, 4. I finished stormwater utility ordinance, Earl Wiley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the members of our city council. We have 2 items of unfinished business that you're all too familiar with. First, dealing with stormwater general flooding issues in the city. Second, dealing with the protection and future quality of our drinking water for our citizens. Aaron Wiley has worked, I think, maybe a year and a half on this. We've had any number of discussions and debate about the ordinance. The ordinance before you does 2 things. First of all, it, like in many cities across the country, establishes a utility ordinance that allows us to manage and finance infrastructure issues relating to flooding. The second thing is it sets up a funding source. And there was a considerable amount of discussion and debate by this council on that issue. And that's why our approach has been very conservative. We know that for decades and decades there has been no stormwater utility in Madison. We know we're not going to solve the problem overnight. And it would be unfair to our citizens and property owners to try to do that. That's why the proposal before you is a modest proposal in terms of its financial impact, allowing us an opportunity over the next year or two to educate the general public in terms of all of our responsibility, and make sure that we're all doing all that we can do so that one property owner is not impacted another property owner with the issue of flooding. So having said that, Mr. Mayor, I would turn the meeting over to Aaron Watkins, sitting here, to answer questions that you might have before our vote is scheduled. Aaron, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. So we've been over the ordinance verbiage a couple times, changed a little bit. We had it set in the last work session. One thing we didn't have set was the fee. So I'm recommending a minimum service charge would be the base fee that the majority of single-family residential properties pay at a flat rate of $4 a month. Nobody pays lower than $4 a month unless council were to act. And I am recommending an ERU, which is 1,000 square foot of impervious surface on all non-single-family residential properties of $2 per month per 1,000 square foot. Just so you know where this puts us in the southeast region, there is a report published semi-annually. Last time I was up here, that report was from 2023, and it was $1.99 was the average cost per ER per 1,000 square foot. And a new report has just come out, and it's now $2.49 per 1,000 square foot is the average cost. Most jurisdictions just go across the board with that. So all single-family residential, they're paying per square foot of impervious. We're wanting to take a more conservative approach, just do a flat fee so everybody knows what they're going to pay. And we have about 500 and some change commercial parcels that are developed, and that would be that would fluctuate based on the impervious surfaces they have on site. We have some challenges in our parcel mapping, but we don't know the exact land type of a lot of parcels. One of the first things we would do, and Jill's already begun working with this, and she's delineated a lot of all of our parcels, and there's just some conflict about different zonings and different uses, so we need to get that to find out who's commercial, who's residential, and we work on that quickly. But the thing that we've not settled are those two fees, $4 a month for all single-family residential, and $2 a month per 1,000 square foot of impervious for non-single-family residential. One other thing that I want to point out is we have this starting on July 1st. We're a little bit behind to begin charging on July 1st, but what we'd like to do is start a marketing campaign July 1st and begin charging as soon as possible, beginning with zero bill, just to get it out there, and then work into the full cost. It would be zero bill and the base rate for everybody, and then we work into over a few months charging full commercial rate for all users. And then users would have a chance to come and appeal those fees based on the language we have in the ordinance for different things they may have. If they're on top of their stormwater, they're maintaining their pond, there's credit for all that. So, any questions from the council?
I think we talked about this in the past. So,
Time too.
ready to move on with this. I know.
Just one thing I could, Aaron. I think it's important to point out that there's an opportunity for the non-residential fee payers to get credits based on things they have on their property, such as retention bonds and so forth. Can you speak about that very briefly, up to 50%?
Absolutely. So up to 50%. We do have, but we can go over 50%. Public entities have a chance to match in kind, do some public education campaigns to further lower their costs, but we have credits in here for fully functioning water quality devices, they get a 50% credit. If they are on an up-to-date industrial permit, they get a 5% credit. Most utilities do that. If they have a design, if they've designed their detention facilities to hold an additional 10% below what they're or above what they're required to, then there's a 50% deduction for that. And the big one is if they're maintaining their detention facility and have maintenance records, then there's a 40% deduction. And some of this fee would go to planning to help with inspections and things as well. So this would help across the board. At this time, we would expect, when fully implemented, that we would be somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 a year in receipts. That's fairly low for a stormwater utility, but for the city of Madison, it would be a big help.
And then the percentages add up to 75.
They do. There's a cap on 50. So the most you get is 50 unless you're public entity. It just gives additional ways for some people with older facilities. They may not be up to date on their detention pond, or may not have a detention pond, but they can still get it.
So,
Just for clarification, when you say single family, you're meaning single family detached.
Single family.
Because townhouses and condos are single family, single family detached.
So we've got it defined in here as a single dwelling per parcel. So if they're individually parcel, they would be single family. If they're parcel together, if there's multiple dwellings, non-ADU on a parcel, then that would be a multifamily to be follow the permit rate.
So you do understand following that all the townhouses in Carriage Way, where they've got lots divided out for each unit, those will treat as single family homes, even though those people see those as multifamily.
They would, and the POA would be on the hook for the balance.
And I would just like to conclude, Mr. Mayor, if we could, we understand that this is a new concept. We're not going to push, if you were to approve, we would not push forward for full implementation as a functionalized relationship. We're going to heavy in the education, have staff develop, and I foresee the implementation of this program being over the next year. As I said before, it's taken us 100 years to get it done. But this is a beginning. That's what we asked a year and a half ago. We asked everybody, research models around the country, and in Georgia, to come up with a model that would put us on the path. And that's what we started to do.
that's my council vote.
If I could just make a comment there. What I like about the plan, well, first of all, the need is there. It seems so obvious. We live in that, as we've all had various water issues. The weather seems to be heading in a more scary direction, I think, in the future. So it makes it even more important that we kind of build up some capital to do these projects. What I like about it is the equity involved in this, where the properties that produce more of the stormwater runoff pay a little more to remediate the negative effects. It seems like the bigger property you have, the more impervious surface, the more you probably should pay, because your property is generating more runoff that we all, as taxpayers, have to deal with. And that's the part that I think is important to remember. I think it's an equitable way to deal with the problem that is it's just going to be underfunded if we rely simply on the operating funds of the city.
I'd like to make a comment as well. The whole PR piece that we speak of, I think is a really important piece. I'm a junkie with the water and the insert in the water every month. Those are the two things that I live for every month. But it needs to go beyond that. I think the kinds of things that we can put out there, I'm going to call them multimodal, for lack of a better term, but put them in different places, maybe on Facebook and social media, those kinds of places. that speak to broader constituencies. So how would we do that? This is important.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
Thank you. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready for the motion and second to go forward.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a motion to approve the stormwater utility ordinance presented by Eric Walkley?
And I will second the motion here.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Those not vote now. John, Reservoir Resolution and final order.
Mr. Mayor, once again, these are two issues that we've been working on for over a year and a half. And the genesis of this issue comes from attending regularly manager meetings, not only across the state of Georgia, but also nationally, where water quality protection, drinking water quality protection, is becoming, or has become, more front and center as issues of pollution grow. Interestingly, I have my biennial meeting of Standard & Poor's this week, and they asked questions about progress on a variety of issues that have financial impact. And one of the questions that I'm being asked is, what current protections do we have to our water source? And I will obviously tell them at least that we propose to tighten up the regulations to protect the water source. But it is an important issue to them when they consider our future bond rate, which has financial implications for all of our taxpayers. So, following the lead of other communities around the country, about a year or a year and a half ago, I met with Larry Stevens, our water supervisor, and we were in agreement that since the management plan for our reservoir had not been touched since 1999, that we should follow the recommendations of experts in the field and take another look-see at our regulations to see whether they were where they needed to be. When we hired Falcon Engineering, we did not direct them towards any specific conclusion. We asked them to take a look at our management plan and our regulations and compare them to other communities in Georgia and also nationally. We asked them to look for best practices, and that's what they've been doing for the last year and a half, which leads us tonight to some recommended changes that you've seen before, as we have appeared before you on several other occasions. I'm just mindful that at the end of the day, we work for and are answerable to the residents and taxpayers of the city of Madison. And what we're talking about is the quality of their drinking water. Now, I'm not saying that there's that the chances are likely at all, but are we doing all that we can do? Because one day we might wake up and find out that the state is telling us that our water source is polluted. And we're going to turn around and have our citizens spend a lot of time in English, 5 gallons of water. I mean, none of us want to deal with that. At the same time, we made it very clear to Falcon that we didn't want any bizarre or radical approach here. We wanted best practices. And they put together some common sense rules and regulations. Now, this rubs against some in this community that have the right, a small number of people that have the right to fish and recreate at this site. One thing I'll say is, if you've been down there, it's a beautiful site for butters and people that are so blessed to be able to call this area their home. It really is a beautiful area, and so I can understand folks' concerns about how their quality of life might be impacted with these regulations. And that's why we asked Falcon to be reasonable, to employ common sense. But at the end of the day, they concluded, as did our professional staff, our DPW's director, who's got 20-some years of experience in the area of public works, Sean Wood, and Larry Stevens, who's been with us, who's a godsend on our staff. They have expressed concerns to me regularly about us not doing enough to protect the quality of our drinking water. And so that is the proposal that is before you. At the end of the day, 99%, 98% of our citizens have never been on this reservoir, probably don't know where the reservoir is, have not recreated on it, know that their tax dollars have paid to buy it and to build it for what they believe is the sole purpose of drinking water. Drinking water, that's what this reservoir is all about. Drinking. It's our secondary source. So that if there was ever an incident, and there has been some in the past, and I already tell you, that we've used this reservoir in the past because there are drought situations. And we have to make sure we're doing all that we can do. Falcon will tell you, Todd Cosby will tell you that he's trying to build in this flexibility on a case-by-case basis. So if a case can be made that the likelihood of negatively impacting is minuscule and someone wants to do this, that, or the other thing, that flexibility remains in this proposal. But I want to be able to go to Standard & Poor's next Thursday and say, our council has updated our management plans 25 years old and employed best practices that come not from us, but from experts in the field and from our professional staff that have told me, John, we're not doing enough. John?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having me back. I'm Todd Cosby for Falcon Design. John said an awful lot of what I was going to say, but and I appreciate that. But again, what we were asked to do is look at the entire reservoir management plan. And as I said before, a lot of it still works, a lot of it's still valid. The things that we've identified that need to be updated are those things that are concerning water quality. And as John said, the reservoir there, the primary purpose of it is to serve as an emergency backup for if you have a water supply issue there at Hartley Creek, which is the city's primary water source. And so, you know, as I said before, there's it's a very small reservoir. It's a very small basin, comparatively speaking. It's very small compared to, say, Lake Rutledge or Lake Oconee. It's minuscule. And so any kind of pollution that comes as a result of recreating out there, boating, fishing, you know, bringing pets and whatever out there, oil spills, fuel spills, whatever, that can contaminate that small water body very easily. And it becomes cost prohibitive, it can become unsafe to use that water if you need to draw upon it. So this ordinance and this resolution put in place the mechanisms for the city to protect its water supply. And so, and in particular, the reservoir, so that when you need it, it's there. And so that was our primary focus, was to make sure that the city has an emergency backup for its drinking water. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I know this is.
So I don't know if one was tested or not, but last one about 30 years ago, anything found in the water that was not drinkable, or called water not drinkable.
I can't attest to any of that. As far as I know, there's nothing to that degree where it was not usable. But the concern is that there's only so much that you can pollute that small water body before it becomes infeasible to use it.
That comes to my council.
Mayor, I feel like I've talked more than my share tonight. This is another important issue. And I'll tell you, those of you in the gallery tonight, seen me struggle with the company's earlier variances that we've had to deal with. This to me is not a struggle at all. This is a very simple equation for me as a voter to the council to come up with what is the most important thing we have is to protect that water source that was purchased by the citizens of the city of Madison 30 years ago for the purpose of supplying emergency water with the city citizens. That is the primary purpose. That is our obligation as council members to play a role in protecting that. Now, the important point you made is that recreational activities, they can have other water sources, but this is unique and based on the size of the reservoir and the related size of the watershed being too small and therefore very fragile. So, I mean, the obligation is to the citizens and their ability to have clean water, and our obligation as a city mentioned in numerous parts of the charter to provide clean water to our citizens as one of the services we provide to the city. And I think the rights, and I put that word in quotation marks, of adjoining property owners or other people who might have gotten keys to access in the past, people unknown to us sometimes. I mean, they pale in comparison to the needs we have to protect this source as an emergency water supply for our citizens who purchased that property. It seemed like a fairly simple thing in my mind, but I'm sure there's some disagreements. That's what I say, and I intend to support this wholeheartedly. Our obligation is to provide clean water for our citizens who purchase that reservoir for exactly that purpose.
Mr. Mayor, sure. Have we had any issues, have we had to use this reservoir in the last 30 years?
I'm sorry.
Has the city had to use the reservoir?
Yes.
We okay.
Stevens can tell us when that was. We had, my understanding is, although I wasn't here, my understanding is that the reason for that was drought. Yes.
And my other question would be, why did only certain people know about the reservoir? Why was it only certain people that used it? Anybody?
The original ordinance said that property owners.
Can you come up front so we can hear you, please?
All right. The original ordinance had were property owners and city employees could have access to fishing at the reservoir. But that has thrown me well beyond the decision over the past few years, maybe closed. So control over the only that got established even though they didn't have gas motors in the water, they were using trouble motor, there was still gas oil on the reservoir. And that has always been a major concern. Like Mr. Collins said, it would take much. Even though 89 million gallons of water, it would take much to contaminate it.
Compare size-wise between the two reservoirs. 89,000 gallons, you said?
There's 89,000 gallons at Dr. Road. We only have 6 million gallons in the Congo River. The 89, we were required at the time of AUD to have a 90-day backup supply should the creek level drop during the drought, because there were no guarantees or other creeks at the time.
And that's how you've drawn it down in terms of the droughts, how many times?
We've done it 4 times since 2002. I don't have the exact dates, but it's been 4 times since 2002.
I guess my other question is about security off Dawson Road. There's a chain link fence there, is there not?
Yes, sir, no problem, is chain link fence at a gate, 30 to 35 feet, right side to side.
So someone who wanted to get in there could simply come up Dawson Road.
Yes, sir.
I don't know, I know this isn't a public hearing, and I don't know if anybody in the room would like to speak, but if it's proper, and see you see fit other council members to hear from anybody who may want to share, I would like to. Sure.
Hello, I'm Rob Barrett.
I would like to address council on this issue. And I think that if anybody wants the quality of water in that lake to be important, it's those around that lake. I'm on property there for 30 years. And just like Councilman Peter Reed said, 90% of the people in this community don't even know about it. And it's, and really, that's the reason why. There's a handful of us who own property around and give you some history about that. I actually did it clearly and did the job for Mayor Allgood that most people said in this room, take it how far I went back. I did it clearly for that site for Mayor Allgood years and years ago. During that time, we get our drinking water out of part of the creek. And there was some times of the year that the drinking water, we would have some issues, and that's when many Walton County and several counties began to look at an alternative. And Allgood did real well in locating that property, and we put that reservoir in there. And later on, I had an opportunity to buy property there, and I did, and I've owned property there for 30 years. And I don't think there's ever been a problem with the quality of water. And I understand Mr. Stevens said that he saw somebody there with a gas engine, and that may have been the case, but the ones who I saw, they use troll motors when they do put a boat in the water. And I, most of the time, like me and my grandson, we just from the bank, we fishing yesterday. I would hate to see those of us who have invested around there to be penalized for something that's not a problem, because, like I say, I have owned property there for 30 years, and it has never been a problem.
that lake is clean all the way around. It's a beautiful sight. As a matter of fact, I think I took Mr. John out there for the first time. I invited other council members to go. Most of which never been there. And I just feel like the few residents of us, we've done a really nice job. I've always said it's the most well-kept secret in Morgan County. I was talking to one of the largest landowners in the county week before last. He didn't even know where it was at. So I'm going to not be the dead horse, but I just feel like those of us who have invested and have done the work to keep that reservoir like it is, and if you go out and look at it, you'll be impressed. It is probably one of the most beautiful pieces of property in the county. And we respect the city owners, we've always done that, but there's never been a quality or water issue there that I know about 30 years.
I think we look at it more as a potential partnership, and a positive for the citizens really too, as far as the owners around there. And I'm a home builder, and I moved on Dawson Road in '99, and several places around the county as a builder, too. So it's important to me, and so I'm building Robert's home for he and his wife too, and we'll be building his mother-in-law's on the property. So we all have to go as builders by, adhering to the rules as far as submitting all this within 200 feet of the state border or over 1 acre. We have to do best management practices and submit our plans basically to the erosion control, Georgia state borders. So we go through that process, even all that. That is all on the property, our property basically right there versus city property. So I would recommend trying to have some kind of partnership, with this group. We have, 6 out of the 9 people, that I know, the property owners on the lake, all have, high interest in this and all want to maintain that property. We'd be willing to take, another step too, and look at best management practices, what's second to as far as if we're allowed, to plant grass, let's say, without fertilizer. There's methods, there's stuff there that needs to be done, cutting the trees off the back of the dam, which is a good way to destroy the dam, let the tree roots grow, too. And if there was some sort of HOA and the common agreement, that we had, with the council about this matter, where we were doing certain things or even paying HOA fees to contribute to that for services that we can't provide possibly. Basically create a group of people that are protecting that whole reservoir for everybody, and they're safe and following those guidelines. Trolling motors is an absolute, no gas motors, don't care if you've got, not using the motor. I think that's important, and it's important to us to maintain that quality, for what it is. I will be building my home there, I'll be buying 6 acres from Robert, here too, building my home right there as well too. So I think it's an important aspect for me being able to utilize that property, but also take care of the future. We recommend a partnership, and that's what we'd like to see, out of all you folks, too, in this, in the end too, where we can help take care of that lake for the citizens' needs as well, as our own selfishly. That would be, my proposal to you. Questions at all? Thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly with everybody here about the keeping the lake as pure as you can. Back in 2012, when I bought the property, my property that borders the reservoir, it was advertised with access to the reservoir. And that was one of the things when we looked at purchasing property here in Madison and Morgan County that we liked that property because it had a reservoir. So I asked the real estate agent, Terry Byer, anybody knows Terry Byer, but I said, Terry, can you get me something in writing that says I do have access to the reservoir? And he did. He produced it. It was an email from the city manager in Madison saying that we had access to the reservoir, the homeowners, landowners on the property, providing, use it properly, electric trolling motors, no gas engines, I explained it, we just have a little 14-foot aluminum boat. He says, yeah, that's not a problem. So we've always respected that and always maintained the shoreline, mowing, stuff like that, kept it looking nice. The thing that I did notice recently is the dam. It used to be maintained, but for some reason, it's not being maintained anymore. So it's completely filled now with pine trees. And my understanding is the roots of the pine trees are going to dig into the dam and cause leaks. So if it's a big concern about the water source, then the dam needs to be looked at because it could be an issue if we have a leaky reservoir. So that's all I got to say. I appreciate it, and it is a beautiful, beautiful piece of property, and the water is pristine. We want to keep it that way.
Mr. Mayor. Sure. I guess I have a question about your email. You talked about, do you have a copy of that email by any chance?
I can get it.
Just a quick question to John, maybe council. How many property owners lives around that lake? Reservoir?
I think there are 9.
9. Could resolution be amended to grandfather amendments?
Well, first of all, I'm intrigued by the concept of you being our eyes and ears because you're there. And I know one of you, and I know how much you love that land. There's no question that you want to protect it, whatever. The challenge for this council is where are we headed in the future? Some very large parcels around that reservoir that can be subdivided. So the dynamic could shift dramatically over the next 7 to 20 years. And so I would say that it depends on what you're looking to grandfather. There's a dock there. There's 2 docks. I don't even know who was the one dock. I don't even know whose dock it is. I can't find out. And if you guys know whose dock it is, I'd appreciate the information because they haven't received any approval. I think this is a group we can work with, and I'd be more than glad to offer this gentleman. But there has to be an understanding that by a long shot, it's not even close, that our responsibility is the citizens, the 5,000 citizens of Madison, not whether or not someone gets to go fishing. That just can't be the rules. And if there's an understanding, could we work together? I think it could be just that makes sense. We're not there often. We don't have cameras there yet, but we don't have cameras there. They're there. They know what's going on there. In many instances, better than we do. And I honestly believe that the gentleman, I haven't met a gentleman that said that we could partner and there could be there could be ideas. I think there's some merit to that. We should pursue that. And I think we should. But fundamentally, I get back to the fact that our water quality experts are standing before you saying, and by the way, if there is an email that a former city manager wrote, I haven't seen it yet, it never been presented to me, but even if it was there, that doesn't tie the hands of the council. The city manager works for the council. You're the bosses. You get to decide what the rules and regulations are. And if something was agreed to 20 years ago, it doesn't mean that you're restricted in any way, shape, or form and I might suggest that you consider legal action against the realtor. They suggest that when you were buying land, you somehow have rights over the city's property.
He's not with us anymore, I don't think.
Okay. So I think that I am hopeful that there's room for collaboration and work, but we have to make sure we protect the interests of our citizens. And as I said, there may be 6 or 8, or whatever the number is, property owners now, they could be 30, could be 50, 10, 15 years, if somebody goes, sometimes they have a right to do. So we don't want to be giving rights to people we know, and inadvertently give rights to a large room. And I would hope that the advisors understand that we're really trying to do the right thing. We're not trying to hurt you, your family, or anything like that. And, you know, I found a situation when I got here where no one could even tell me how many people had keys. We don't know to this day, we don't know how many people had keys. Certain people were given access when 98% of the citizens have never been given that. That's just the old way. We all know it's right. We all know that we need to protect our water. I think we can do it by working in this room, but I think we have a responsibility to do it right now.
Mr. Mayor, I definitely, I don't know everyone, but I know Pastor T. I've been on council 12 years. I've never heard of this water source. I've never been to the water source. My big issue is about taxpayers paid for this. What are we talking about right now? We're talking about, with all due respect, I respect you, Pastor T, and everyone that spoke. But if our taxpayers pay for this and we're going to give special privileges to 9 people, I don't think that I agree. My tax money pays for this as well. I don't speak for everyone, but I speak on behalf of some citizens that don't have a voice. And we're saying it's a really nice, pretty area that the taxpayers paid for, and they never even seen it was there. And now we're talking about giving it to 9 people.
If I could add to Council Member Peters' comment, with all due respect to our property owner neighbors up there, the city owns the shoreline, that entire reservoir, the dam, at least it looks like maybe 50, 60 feet, all the way around. Yet the status quo, with lack of a firm plan like this, has resulted in, as John said, a couple of docks being constructed on the city's own shoreline, land being cleared to either improve views or access to the lake through city-owned, taxpayer-owned edges of the reservoir. Who knows who has keys out there? The locks have been changed now. I believe we finally have a grip on that. But up to now, who knows who's been copying keys, who has access, who's putting trailers into the mud boat ramp, if you will, creating sediment and everything else. There's been. I'm not saying that any of the people who just spoke were doing any of those things, but that this is what's happened on the reservoir with kind of a lack of oversight of the city. And again, Gary Peters Reed's comment and John's, it's the taxpayers who have the right to have clean water out of their reservoir, and we have the professional opinion of water people, not me, saying that based on the size of the reservoir, it has to be protected from activity, including the shoreline. And that is enough for me.
And if I may add something to that as well, first of all, the Department of Natural Resources requires 150-foot setback from the shoreline. And also, and I can't find that, there's actually a PDF on file that you can find that refers to reservoirs. And I don't have time, I can't find it, but I consider the processing where they also require vegetation to be maintained around within that setback in order to kind of keep the area. I mean, there was something about kind of recharging and stuff like that that actually preserved the reservoir more. And my other concern was that, and I echo Councilmember Reed's perspective about having, just a few access something that belongs to the city and to the taxpayers. But my other concern is just liability, absolute liability. What happens if some kid grows out there, and we have a, God forbid, we have an accident of some sort? Who gets blamed for that? Who gets hung for that? Who's out to drive for that sort of thing? I realize it's not my understanding. I've never heard of anything happening so far, but I'm just saying that that's also something that I think we need to concern ourselves with, and I don't know whether Jay can weigh in on what our liability would be with that or not, but that's something we need to bear in mind.
It is city property, anything that happens on city property could be city liability.
Like any other city property, all of the city property.
I will just mention, if I could, Mr. Mayor, that when I talk about partnership, when I talk about the residents working with the city, all we can control is our driveway. We have a nice fence, it would be difficult to jump over, but you can walk around it. But if those gentlemen right there will work with the city and say, we will not let people cross our property, then they actually become very helpful to the city. And I think the spirit of you being here, the spirit of your comments, you're open to doing that, because we can all of a sudden get 9 property owners to guarantee to the city that we're with the city, block any access. That's significant.
I think we'd be all open to signing liability waivers to solve that issue. Well,
I don't think I understood what it says.
I feel like I speak for the group, and the fact that we will all sign liability waivers as well as property owners there to release all liability to the city.
So Mayor, just flip something if I may.
Sure.
This isn't a motion, but I'm trying to see what everyone else feels. I think the time is to approve this from what John said with the bond rating and the folks you're dealing with on your biennial. It is time for the essence on this. We all agree we want to keep the water safe and clean and the purpose of it. I would personally have you adopting this and then have John do what he spoke to, and folks who have some desire to work with them, let them work that out. You can come back to us and not for John later, but perhaps go ahead and approve this, get it, we're going to have our bond rating and be in place.
Somehow, should the motion stated.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
So the collaboration, I understand, but will it still be just for 9 people? I know the 9 people that live there will be taken care of, and I heard you say you would be liable for what goes on there, making sure that people wouldn't jump the fence or whatever it is. But would it still be that it's just those 9 families are the only ones that go to this reservoir and enjoy it?
I mean, I will offer an editorial comment and say, it'd be nice to get it down to 9. Because as you probably know, over the years, many other hand-selected people have been using this when 98% of the rest of the citizens have never had an opportunity to. So to get it down to 9 would actually be something that is, I mean, I think it's significant. If you're saying that you believe that this collaboration is being discussed means that Pastor Terrell's going to vote for it, I don't even know what they're going to ask. But the fact is that we have very limited access to this reservoir. They own most of the land around it. And if there's a way to get them to commit to blocking access, I would suggest that the professionals would say we're actually better off from a protection standpoint than not. I mean, how often are we out there? We out there once a week? What are the likelihood that someone that would stop someone that jumps over our fence and walks around as opposed to them with houses there calling the city hall saying, you got a lot of to do with this. We also need to talk about cameras and technology. But we've got to a different phase of all this, and it's kind of sad. It's sad that we have to be concerned about terrorism, we have to be concerned about people hurting us, but that's just where we are. And so the adoption of this, I think, is a good first step. Showing the state and showing Standard & Poor's that we're taking a protection of our drinking water seriously. And ultimately, any changes would have to be approved by the council. So no matter what the conversations take place, it isn't the city manager that's going to wheel and deal. I'm not in favor of that. I mean, that's what we're trying to stop. That's what's going on. And I think that approving this as a first step is a great thing for the city, for the future of the city. You're dramatically increasing the possibility of protecting water sources. Is it perfect? No. And maybe there's things we do in terms of partnerships with other landowners to keep people out. But we want to keep people out. Unfortunately, as was said, those that haven't been there, it's gorgeous, it's a beautiful site. And if we didn't need drinking water, it would be a wonderful site to bring grandkids fishing water. That's not why it was blocked, and that's not what it is. And that's what we want to stop.
Yeah, I said one thing. Sure. I want to clarify something you said because I think it's really important. The city actually owns the land around the reservoir as well.
100 to 150.
Okay. I think that's an important piece that could easily slip away from us.
That is important. It's not just 100 foot watershed. It's actually city-owned, taxpayer-owned land. Mayor, I would be glad to present a motion.
Yeah, John, so we're going to give that's all right.
I would move, Mayor, to approve the ordinance to improve protection of the water supply watershed and to repeal conflicting provisions. The ordinance as presented.
Second.
Are there any other discussion?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just add one thing, which that Eric just brought up about, first of all, the city owning the city property goes out 100 feet. Again, that's part of the buffer that's meant to be there to preserve the reservoir. And I fear, and I get it, I get the cooperation, I get your approach or your comments, John, but the last bullet points on the ordinance here is the unauthorized mowing, trimming, landscaping, clearing, grading, demolition, and construction, which then says, are we, and I know this is something to work out, it's something we need to consider. I mean, we may ask those 9 property owners to be sort of the protectorate of the reservoir, but does that mean we're giving them full access to it? Of course, if that's under your discretion, you can do this. I just say that I fear the degradation of the 100-foot buffer if we're saying, yeah, in exchange for you looking out after this, you get to kind of have full access to it, which would then include mowing and trimming just in order to get access to that reservoir. So, it is a slippery slope.
We have a motion second on the favor, show of hands. Opposed, none. Voted none. Thank you so much. That public comments tonight. Any public comment?
My name is Glenn Askew. I live on Old Hills Road. And I have voiced already concerns I have about this proposal, which I understand we're taking up again next week, called Madison on the Move, about the proposed transportation plan. I would like to, if you don't mind, spend a moment expressing some of the concerns that I have. As City Councilman Jim Malinowski noted at the outset of tonight's meeting, small decisions can have lasting impacts. And I think that's very important. My comments concerning this proposal, it's ostensibly designed to address Madison's problems with traffic, and it acknowledges but does not solve several, such as the decades-long failure by mayor and council, many of them, as well as Morgan County commissioners and the Georgia Department of Transportation, to address the need for the western bypass. We all know that. That's one of the crises we have in our community. It also focuses on parking as a bit of a solution for the traffic concerns. Now, I recognize, too, that the city has recently posted a revised version of this plan, and I've tried to read it and understand the changes, but it's a complicated plan. So I would encourage you, Mayor and Council, to provide the public adequate time to review this revised document. I understand again that you'll be addressing it on the agenda next week. I hope you won't make any decisions about it at that time, because I truly do not believe the public will have adequate time to deal with those decisions. One of the things I noted, am I correct in understanding that the city no longer intends to use Call Street and Oil Road as major thoroughfares accessing the 1,763 acres or so of land on the northwest side of the railroad tracks that include the former British farm? Is that correct? All right, well, I'm asking that question, and if indeed that is the case, which I hope it is, I hope City Council will proceed to ask and request from CSX Railroad and the Seaboard Line to have those railroad crossings closed to vehicular traffic. Certainly, that's not part of the plan. Let's get the crossings closed. You did it years ago for Fernie Street. Let's do it for these two streets and take care of the matter, so traffic doesn't come into the district on that part of town. I'm delighted to hear tonight from the city planner, Mama Callahan, that she recognizes the historic district is a different animal. And if you'll indulge me for a second, Madison is on the National Register because of its attractive and intact 19th century design. It's not just the quality of the architecture. Many people think that's why we're on the district, but really that's not it entirely. It's because of the openness of the streetscape and the town's appearance as a rural county seat in Georgia. State and federal officials agreed back in 1974 supporting the inscription because, quote, Madison is an exceptional community with a wealth of 19th century architecture that was possible because of the rich cotton economy. It could have also had enslavement. Few towns founded in the 19th century and early 19th century Georgia have been able to preserve so much and had so much to offer in the first place. Now, to protect that, the preservationist William Chapman was hired to write Madison Historic Preservation Manual. I assume you're all familiar with this. Of course, anyone who's ever been on the Historic Preservation Commission is familiar with it because it's guidelines. It's used to...
You have 1 minute remaining, sir. 1 minute remaining.
Oh, well, I would just like to point out, since my time is quickly eroding, that this does tell the homeowner what the homeowner is supposed to do. But it also tells you, City Council, what you're supposed to do. The homeowner only owns the private property on which the house sits. You own the streets. You own the public property that's throughout the historic district. And what Mr. Chapman notes in his guidelines here in the manual is that those parts of town are to be protected. The ordinance is designed to protect the overall character and appearance of town. It applies to individual historic properties, but also open spaces, sidewalks, retaining walls, outbuildings. It charges the city to uphold the integrity of this district. That's all in jeopardy with this Madison on the Move plan. Madison on the Move introduces new urbanism, a new streetscape designed to the city that is counter to the 19th century design in this guide. And if you adopt it, you'll be compromising the integrity. You'll be destroying the attributes of the 19th century. Thank you. And thank you for your time. Thank you.
Public comments. Chad.
Good evening, everyone. City Council, I don't want to be here for no comment. I don't want to be here to talk about my problem that I had. I've been here 2 times, and each time, y'all didn't want to talk about it, so, or y'all, I know you don't talk about it when you talk about a comment. Well, I'm not here for no comment. I'm here about my problem that I had. Well, y'all, if y'all want to buy my property, I leave town. If the city want to buy my property, I sell to the city, leave town. But you got to do something about my problem. The reason my law didn't come, I'm not paying no $800-900 to get a law to deal with you. I'm not going to do that. So if the city want to buy my property, sell it to the city, I leave town. Or if y'all come and get my problem fixed, I pay tax. And there was mail city that over there, we drive by my house every day, a wall is about to fall down on the side of the sidewalk. And the city go down and build a brick wall. But y'all want to come down by the house and see all the problem that we got? I got a laptop where you be able to see. And I'm going to put a laptop mail so when you come out there, you see that wall about to fall down right on the sidewalk, right in front of my house. I talked to y'all about that 2 or 3 months ago, and y'all had not done nothing about it. And I hope I'm not talking too loud, but I can't hear, and so I might be talking too loud. But when you put it down here, don't put it down for no comment. I don't want to talk about my problem. Each time they tell me that you go put it down, then you put it down for a comment. I don't know time for.
No, it's not. You have 3 minutes remaining, Mr. Chairman.
Councilperson Wagner, I apologize, I have handouts. So I'll give one to Deborah and ask if maybe she can scan to you. My name is Elizabeth Bell, and I live at 595 South Main Street. Thank you, first of all, for the town hall you held in May on the draft transportation plan. Since that meeting, tons of pages of data have been posted concerning the plan. And then at your Friday, May 30th work session, our planner said that it could take some time to get with the consultant to incorporate the revisions to the plan. But then, very quickly, a new draft apparently was posted the following Monday, June 2nd. I'm sure that this does not apply to you, but many people do not check the city website every day. An ad was put in Wednesday's paper on page 6, below the movie night ad, identifying Madison on the Move as, but it doesn't identify it as a transportation plan, and it doesn't indicate that a revised plan had been issued. And now we understand that the revised plan may be considered for a vote by you as early as next Monday, June 16th. I think it's safe to say that the public has not had nearly enough time to review this revised plan. The text of this draft is 85 pages with an appendix. It does not show by red line, highlights, or any other explanation what's been changed. So that leaves the public to do a side-by-side comparison of two huge documents to see what's different, what's been changed. But even a brief review shows some very significant internal inconsistencies. One page says one thing on a topic, and another page says something very different. I've given you copies. Ms. White, Counselor, I apologize, but maybe she can get up to you as soon as possible. And this copy caught my eye probably because it's about my street. But there are likely more like this, which makes it very difficult for the public to address. On this one, you'll see that once again, on one page, all the Old Post and Academy are said to be one way, Academy with street parking, and Old Post with bike lanes. Then later in the draft, they're shown differently on the implementation page. I also think, what's the big rush? This document is supposed to guide our transportation decisions for the next 20 years. Why do we have to hurry up and adopt it before everyone really knows what's in it and the draft itself isn't even correct? I ask you please to postpone the next hearing or any hearing on this plan to allow the public to read it, to understand it, to bring their suggestions to you, and to do that fairly. I ask that the revised plan be posted first after correcting all possible inconsistencies and contradictions, and second, with red lines or highlights or something to help the public understand what has been changed here from the first draft. I think it's only fair, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. White, Counselor, I think Deborah just sent it to you.
Just got it. Thank you.
Any other comments? If there are no more comments, I'll make a motion to executive session to discuss resolution.
Second.
More discussion on the show of hands. Those none.